Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. My friends, this is going to be the starkest warning I have ever provided on this channel. I do not believe that we are being told the truth about how bad things are on the World War III front line in Ukraine. And I do say World War III front line. I'm at a 99.9% confidence level that we need to be pouring our blood, sweat, tears, heart, soul, whatever resources we have towards the task of self-reliance, preparedness, learning to live with less, leading a more minimalist lifestyle, so when the austere future does ultimately slap us in the face, that we can take the hit. Because right now, everything is pointing towards one of the darkest, most bleakest winters that we've experienced on this planet in some time. So let me explain myself. Now, I know oftentimes when a channel starts off a video and says, we're being lied to, they go on this political rant where they're trying to scapegoat the other side. That's not what we do here. We are apolitical, we are non-religious, but we do respect people's religious faiths 100%. We are not partaking in any sort of woke culture wars on either side of the debate. And we just try to give you guys the cold, hard facts about what is going on the ground. We don't pander to the algorithm for views. We don't regurgitate, the popular opinions just so we can get popular ourselves. And we're certainly not a court jester for the elites like a lot of channels on here are right now. We are good faith actors. And I'm just trying to figure out exactly what is going on the ground so we can effectively move through this World War III space. Now, I received an email from a subscriber who recommended that I go and watch a video by one Task and Purpose YouTube channel. And I'm going to share my response that I sent to that subscriber, my email response. Now, this video, the thesis of this video is that the Ukraine has reached a turning point in the war, that Ukraine was now on the offensive and that the Russians were running scared, and that the war would be over soon because the Ukrainians are going to take back all the territory. Nothing could be further from the truth, and let me explain to you why. Today I'm going to break it all down. This is going to be the most raw, uncut, bareback video that I've ever offered up. Guys, you need to prep your ass off right now, okay? Because we are not being told the truth. The same media who said that the Afghan war was going well, the same government who said that there's not going to be any inflation, the same government that said masks don't work, now are trying to act as they are the authority over what is actually going on right now. And I want it to be made abundantly clear that I am not picking sides in this fight. I'm not pro-Russian, so to speak, and I'm also not necessarily a pro-Ukrainian in the sense that I acknowledge that there is a backstory here with respect to what precipitated this conflict. We are trying to be objective as possible because all we care about as preppers, as a raw survivalist, okay, is how we're going to navigate this. Now, this was my response to this individual. And I'm going to be honest, I don't like the channel Task and Purpose. I think he's exactly what I have just said I was not. And let's just jump right into this. This is my response. This court jester who regurgitates whatever was said on the same media that lies about everything else wants me to believe the following. The Battle of Kherson, in which thousands of brave young Ukrainian men lost their lives, was just a mere diversionary tactic to take attention away from the real fight that was in the completely non-strategic city of Kharkov. You know that Kharkov Oblast butts up against the Russian border. Where are you going to go? You're going to attack Russia? Good luck deflecting tactical nuclear warheads for the rest of winter, if that is attempted. This is a city that is so important that the Russians only committed 2,000 men to defending it and quickly packed up before shots were even fired. This, of course, is being touted as the turning point in the war. The deaths of all of these young Ukrainian men who will never see their families and their children again in the Battle of Kherson, which was a failure. Okay, Kherson in the south, the hub for Ukraine's global trade and what prevents it from being a rump state, the place of true strategic importance, is not important. What's important is the stunning victory which saw the defeat of nothing but some vacant land that they now have to defend. The so-called Southern Invasion diversionary tactic, which even the mainstream media, as well as yours truly, blabbed about being possible misdirection for months before the offensive was even staged, this went completely over the head of the monkey brain Russian top brass. You know, because they are stupid, just like in the movies. They just accidentally created nuclear weapons, ICBMs, space stations, and semiconductors. What complete morons. They're just flying by the seat of their pants, right? They have no strategy whatsoever. The USA and NATO stand to gain nothing by talking up this so-called turning point in the war to justify the sacrifices of the coming winter of death and sinking billions more into the conflict. Nope, no motive to hype this up and boost the morale of a diminished army going into the dark season whatsoever. And now what is happening? Now, critical infrastructure is being targeted and civilian Ukrainians are suffering as a result. The truth is this: NATO is freaking out because the Russians have just outsmarted them again, and they needed an easy win, which is actually, in my personal opinion, most likely a trap. And we'll see how that plays out in the weeks ahead. Not only does this now generate support in Russia for a mass mobilization, but NATO now realizes that a counteroffensive against Russia that doesn't possess an overwhelming force, as if they didn't know this already, like in Kharkov, where it was, by some people's estimates, up to 7-1, is doomed to failure, just like in Kherson. This guy, Task and Purpose, is smart enough to play the algorithm for views which favors these sort of fantasies, these self-delusional fantasies, over reality. I'm on this side. I'm on the side of the West. However, if I was to get an accurate assessment of the situation, that's what it would be, what I just told you. Not that this is some turning point in the conflict. Have they made any significant progress in the South? No, the South is what matters. Even the Chechens have now committed to taking Odessa. That is the end goal, is to create a rump state, cut them off from the sea, and put the noose, tighten the noose from there. That is the strategy. And this self-delusion that we are entertaining with these court jesters it's pure amusement. Okay, now you can have that, that's fine, but is that going to help you to prepare? Is that going to motivate you to prepare for what's coming? Because guess what, guys? And this is where I differ from Alex. If any of you are in the loop of Russia-Ukraine war talk, you know who Alex is. Not the one with the British accent, but the other one. This is where we differ. He thinks that the collective West, as he calls it, wants Russia to mobilize for all-out war. I disagree entirely, but guess what is happening right now? We called this a couple days ago, okay? The leader of the Communist Party of the Russian Federation, KPRO, Gennady Zyuganov, has publicly called what is happening in Ukraine a war, and he is pushing for total mobilization. Now, you need to understand that it's taboo within Russia, especially within the government, to call it a war. So there's many people within the Duma, on Russian state media as well. It's not Western media that is calling for a Russian general mobilization, a commitment of more forces. They don't want that. They don't want people to realize the true military potential that the Russians bring to bear. They do not want that. But state media in Russia, I know, we should start calling it state-sponsored media in NATO as well, because that's pretty much exactly what it is, especially here with the CBC, or the BBC or whatever. But Russian state-sponsored media is passionately and vehement about their calls for a general military mobilization. You have the influential bloggers within Russia doing it. You have the Chechens calling for it. Everybody in Russia is screaming to mobilize more forces to commit to the conflict. And it's only a matter of time before that actually happens. So I do not disagree, or I do not agree with Alex, even though I do respect that guy a lot. I want to make that abundantly clear. That's somebody I respect, even though I think that sometimes people on that side of the debate tend to minimize Russia's losses and maximize the gains of NATO. I do think he's arguing from a good faith position, and I can't say the same about this task and purpose court jester. So anyways, this guy goes on to say that today the fate of Russia depends on the victory in Donbass. A general mobilization is needed in the country. Completely different laws are required. Now, it should be noted that this attack on civilian critical infrastructure within Russia is a turning point in the war. The legal framework in order to allow Russia to basically start attacking these targets is not permitted under the current special military operation. So that means they've already stepped outside the parameters of this SMO, as some people call it, and they're already, entering a new phase of the war. So it's only a matter of time before they reclassify this operation as something else. Some people say it's going to be termed an anti-terrorist organization, whatever you want to call it. It's going to be the commitment of a much larger force of people. I myself don't think it's ever going to be referred to in those terms. You're never going to hear an all-out declaration of war unless something transpires around the border of the Kharkov Oblast. But I don't think that that is going to happen. I think that the Ukrainians are smarter than that, and NATO is smarter than that. Now, the big topic of the day is whether or not there is going to be security guarantees for Ukraine with this new agreement, which has been drafted up by the Ukrainians. If it is approved, will be very similar to Article 5 of NATO, which would allow all of Europe and any NATO member to come to the direct military aid if Ukraine was attacked by Russia, which of course it is. Now, Dmitry Medvedev, I don't know if that guy's been drinking or not, but he is not taking too kindly to this suggestion. This is what he had to say. If these half-wits continue the unrestrained supplies of the most dangerous types of weapons to the Kiev regime, sooner or later the military campaign will move to another level. In this case, Western countries will no longer be able to stay in their clean houses and apartments, laughing at how they masterfully weaken Russia by proxy. Everything around them will be on fire. This is the bleakest rhetoric that I've ever heard him utter. Their people will experience trouble in full. The earth will be on fire and concrete will melt in the truest sense of the word. We will get to experience big problems as well. Everyone will be in big trouble, he said. They are not happy about this security agreement that could potentially happen. And guys, I'm telling you right now that the situation in Ukraine is not going well for us, as in NATO. It is not going nearly as well. The Russians are using a minimal amount of resources very strategically to achieve their objectives, which are to essentially cut Ukraine off from the coast. Now, here's another message I got from a subscriber, okay? Let's shoot ourselves in the foot a little bit more. Please do not use my name or email. Never will, never do. Please send me all the information you possibly can. And remember, take this with a grain of salt. Some people think that I'm being fed, poor information. Just because I entertain information, or even if I share information, doesn't mean we run with it 100%. Doesn't mean that, okay, that's now, built into my framework of how I'm viewing the war. It just means that it's something I will consider. But this is definitely something that made me think, and this was after I did that whole email write-up, okay? Kharkov is a college town. There is no strategic advantage. I believe Russia's presence there was the real diversion. I second that. 2,000 men, what are you going to do? Clearly, it wasn't a priority for them, okay? If anything, that was the diversion, to have those guys there. Russia wants the coast. It wants access to the Mediterranean for their oil pipeline. Russia was not defeated here. They withdrew. I agree. There's a difference between a defeat and a retreat. It's one thing to look at land, but if you look at, there's a great video that shows how World War II progressed every day, and the land exchanges on the map. It's a great video on YouTube, has like 20 million views or something like that. And you can see that a lot of the land acquisitions were very, very large and sudden. So the land, a lot of people confuse that as victory. But what is really victory is the loss of all of those young, brave Ukrainian soldiers. That is the real tragedy here. That is the real loss. Okay, that's what was lost. The land is just, it's kind of inert in a sense. It's not that important in the grand scheme of things. What's important is the military that you neutralize. Okay, that is the utmost importance. Now, let's carry on with this. Kherson is the key area. Russia needs to hold the coast for their long-term plans to control the coast. The Crimea area is coastal. All other significant areas that Russia has tried to control are coastal, of course, with the exception of the Donbass. This is all about pipelines and nothing else. Well, I'm sure it's about national security as well. That's where we might differ. Turkey is preparing to invade Greece over that Aegean island dispute. I don't know if it's that far yet, but they have been increasing threats and aggressive behavior. Turkey has been friendly with Russia and has gone against NATO in many significant instances recently, including Russian bans and Sweden, bans on Sweden and Finland joining NATO. They're just pandering to Russia. Turkey will guarantee passage for Russia through the Bosphorus Straits. Russia will support Turkish aggression in the Mediterranean so they can both control Russian oil into the Mediterranean. Unless Greece and NATO can control Constantinople, Istanbul, Russia, Turkey will control the flow of oil to all of Europe. Very, very interesting analysis there. See, I don't necessarily take that and run with that to the bank, but that's an interesting analysis. That's thinking outside the box. That's exactly what you have to do. If I, in July, the first day I heard that they were planning a counteroffensive in the south, the first thing that occurred to pretty much myself and everybody was, why would you announce it? Obviously, the Russians thought the same thing. Unless you just think that, just like in Hollywood, all the bad guys are idiots and only Team America and NATO are the smart ones. Guys, I mean no disrespect to Americans or in any NATO countries, but we need to not delude ourselves when we're trying to, like, would you rather have smoke blowing up your ass, or would you rather be told the truth about how bad it is so you can respond effectively? What this is, in many respects, I think, is a PR campaign to try to justify this military expenditure, to try to show the Europeans that, look, your sacrifices are not for naught. Unfortunately, it's going to be for naught this winter. Depending on how you look at it, I guess. If you look at it long term, maybe if the Russian military is ultimately defeated many years from now, maybe we'll be able to look back and say, okay, it was worth it from Europe's perspective. But then you have a destabilized Russia, and then, of course, you have all these nuclear weapons floating around on the black market. You don't want that. Nobody wants a destabilized Russia. That's in nobody's interest. Unless, I guess, you're some of the war hawks of the world. So that's what I got for you today, guys. Dmitry Peskov has said that the government is not discussing a military mobilization at this moment. That's what he said, at this moment. Of course, that's what they're going to say, because they don't also want it to look as though their backs are up against the wall, which I don't think they are. But Putin is playing this smart. He is trying to feel out public attitudes for a mass mobilization, okay? And if he can have the public demanding, if he can have state media, if he can have the politicians, if he can have the military generals demanding more support, more mobilization, then his hands are freed. Then it's a simple move on his part to boost his approval ratings by simply pressing the big red button that says go with respect to the Russians' military-industrial complex. Guys, that's all I got for you today. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. If you want to support this channel, and if you, I mean, after saying all that and possibly committing some sort of shooting myself in the foot, I don't want to use the S word, you know, with the algorithm, I just give it to you guys raw, because I'm not a bullshitter. I'm not a bad faith actor like a lot of these people on YouTube who are just doing this for clicks, or their purview of the battlefield is just so narrow that they're just too ignorant to understand what is truly going on, and they can't think outside the box one bit. You have to. You absolutely have to think outside the box, because when SHTF comes, the same thing is going to be playing out on a micro level. If you can't think a few moves ahead of your opponent, you and your community are not going to survive. It's not just all about head-to-head clashes and, you know, who's going to still be standing when the smoke clears. It's about outmaneuvering, and it's about strategy. That's what it's all about. And the Russians know this, and NATO knows this as well. It's about who can outflank who. And right now, the only person getting outflanked, in my personal opinion, based on everything I've heard about what is going on, all of these assessments from these so-called experts on YouTube, they all seem to lack a certain substance. You know, it all seems very cursory, and it seems very surface level analysis. It's just the reiteration of these talking points, this propaganda, to be brutally honest. And we don't want propaganda. If I'm in a war against an opponent, I don't want to be spoon-fed lies about how good we are doing if we're not doing well. That's all there is to it. It has nothing to do with, oh, you're a sympathizer, blah, blah, blah. No, I have a frickin' brain, and I'm trying to use it to the best of its capability. I'm not deluding myself with half-truths in order to feel better, because feelings don't win wars. And the Russians know this. They're being very empirical about how they're conducting this operation. And we're not. We're delusional. And I mean, our society is crumbling. And before long, it's going to be too late. So all I can say, guys, is I've never been more confident because of all of this, because of the fact that we're never going to be leveled with about how bad it is, that you need to prep your ass off. That's all I got for you today. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.